We are going to be doing 10 problems today, and if needed, we're going to be rounding to the nearest hundredth. There are many of you who are not reading instructions and seeing what you need to be rounding to, so that's important. But the strategy we're going to be using is to get rid of the fractions. And while a lot of these fractions are not difficult fractions to work with, what I'm finding in the work is that fractions are causing us a little bit of grief. So this whole assignment, we're going to take the fraction component out of it, and we are going to solve it from there. The other thing is, people are not using correct algebra format. Correct algebra format is we keep the things on the left-hand side on the left and the things on the right-hand side on the right. And so the format is also going to be important here. So the first thing I'm going to do is change this to an improper fraction by multiplying 5 times 3, which is 15, and adding 1 to get 16 thirds. And I'm going to rewrite everything from above down below. This is proper algebra format. Now, I have an improper fraction here. I would like to not have that fraction at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply every single piece by the denominator. And the reason I'm just using the denominator here is because I do not have any other fractions anywhere else. So I'm going to write 3 times 16 over 3 plus 3 times c is equal to 3 times 3. And you'll notice I use different notations for how to multiply. You may choose the one that you like best. I'm going to put this over 1, and I'm going to cancel out those 3's. So now I just have 16 plus 3c is equal to 9. Now I can look at what I have in my algebra equation. I can see that on this side I have numbers and variables, and on this side I only have numbers. So it would probably be best to not have this number over here. And so what I'm going to do is I want to take this side to 0. And I just want to be left with my 3 c's here. So on each side I'm going to subtract 16. These are going to cancel and go to 0. I'm going to be left with 3 c's, and over here I can change that to plus and negative, and I have 9 plus a negative 16. Notice how my equal sign is pretty much still lined up right here. And on the right hand side I still just have my numbers. Negative 16 plus a positive 9 is equal to negative 7. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide each side by the coefficient so that I can just get my c all by itself. So I'm undoing this multiplication by dividing. So I'm going to divide this side by 3 and this side by 3. Those are going to cancel, and I'm going to get that c is equal to a negative 2 and 1/3. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. Now, if you wanted to use your calculator, because it did indicate that you could round to the nearest hundredth here, then you would be looking at taking negative 7 divided by a positive 3. And you need to make sure on your calculator you know how to get a negative. A positive 3. That's equal to a negative 7/3, which is what I got, and then I simplified it. But on the calculator, it's going to be a negative 2, and now they said to round to the nearest hundredth, and this is a repeating decimal, so that would be C is equal to negative 2 and 33 hundredths. So you would have the repeating symbol over that. So this is the format that I want. There is not enough space right here to get that format in so that your teacher can read it when you turn it in. So I want these done in your notebook. What I will allow is for you to have 2 problems side by side, but no more than that. I don't want you to be cramming things in left and right. So here's number 2. Negative 10 and 5/7 is equal to 16 and 8/9 D. Now again, because I have fractions, before I even start thinking about should I be adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing with the terms that I have here, I'm going to look at not having any of these fractions, so that I'm just dealing with whole numbers like I was when I got down here. So I look at my 2 denominators. I have 2 denominators in this problem, and I want to find the least common denominator that I can for these 2 numbers, 7 and 9. So I start with the largest number, denominator, which is 9, and I multiply it by 2. That gives me 18. And I say, is 7 a factor of 18? Will 7 divide into 18 evenly? Nope. So then I take 9 and multiply it by 3. 9 times 3 is 27. Nope, not a factor of 27. 9 times 4 is 36. Nope, 7 is not a factor of 36. 9 times 5 is 45. 7 is not a factor of 45. 9 times 6 is 42. 54. 7 is not a factor of that. 9 times 7. So I'm actually going to be using the product of these 2 numbers, which I knew all along, but I wanted to show you how to go through that process because we really want to find the least common denominator. So what I'm going to be using is 63, 9 times 7. But before I do that, I'm going to pay attention to my signs here. This is a negative. So I'm going to change this into an improper fraction. And when I change that into an improper fraction, negative 10 times 7 is negative 70 plus 5 is negative 75 sevenths. And it says that is equal to, I don't know what 16 times 9 is today, so I'm going to use my calculator. 144, and I have to add 8 to that if you wanted to make sure you're doing it correctly. That's 152. So I'm going to have 152, and notice that's positive. I'm going to put it over 9, and that whole thing is multiplied by D. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply each of these terms by that least common denominator. So I'm going to multiply this by 63, and I'm going to multiply this by 63. 63 over 1. Now when I look over here, I see that I can cancel. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 63 divided by 7 is 9. Over here, I can cross cancel. 9 divided by 9 is 1. 63 divided by 9 is 7. So now what I'm going to do, all of my denominators are 1, which means that the remaining problem is going to be 9 times negative 75 is equal to 152D times 7. So I'm going to do this multiplication, and I'm going to do this multiplication and rewrite my problem that way. Negative 75 times 9 is a negative 675. I'm going to bring down my equal sign approximately where it was above, and then I'm going to multiply 152 times 7 times D. Remember, multiplication is commutative, so I can be doing that in any order I want to. And when I multiply 152 times 7, I get 1064. And now I'm going to multiply that by D. So now I can look at my problem here, and I can see that I don't have any addition, I don't have any subtraction, but I do have a multiplication here. And to undo multiplication, I use division. And I'm going to divide by the coefficient that is in front of my variable. So I'm going to divide both sides by 1064. This is going to cancel, so I'm just going to be left with D on the right hand side. On the left hand side, I have negative 675 divided by 1064, and that is going to give me this number. And you remember in our answers, it asked us to round to the nearest hundredths place. That's 2 decimal places. So when I'm rounding to the nearest hundredths place, I look at the 3rd decimal place, and I use only that number to consider what I should do with the digit in my hundredths place. Because this number is less than 5, I'm going to leave my 3 alone, and I'm simply going to write -0 and 63 hundredths as my answer. If you wanted to be very, very accurate, this symbol actually should change to the wiggly equal sign, which means it's about, because we rounded. And that would tell us that we rounded. So I'm going to box in my answers right here and right here, and I'm going to come down and do number 3, which is 1/4 Z equals -26. I only have one fraction here, so I can just simply use the denominator that I'm given, and I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. So I'm going to have 1/4 Z times 4. Just preference, I like to write my multiplication in front. You could have put it behind. And I'm going to multiply -26 over 1 by 4. So these 4s are going to cancel. I'm left with only 1Z, so I can write that as Z, or I can write it as 1Z, and that's going to be equal to 4 times -26, which is -104. And there's my answer. This is a 1 in front of the Z, so dividing each side by 1 would give me that answer. Okay, number 4. Number 4 is 1/5 F, or excuse me, 1/5 plus F. Remember, that's a 1F equals -11. So I only have one fraction again. That's always nice. That means I'm going to multiply everything by 5. So 5 times 5/1 times 1/5 plus, I have to multiply the F times 5 as well. And I have to multiply the -11 times 5. So cross cancel those out. Those go to 1s. So I am left with 1 times 1 is 1. I'm not left with 0 here. Some kids will just think, oh, those cancel out, so this is a 0. When I'm multiplying, that isn't true. I still have to do my multiplication. 1 times 1 is 1, over 1 times 1 is 1. 1 divided by 1 gives me 1. So I have 1 plus 5f is equal to negative 55. Now, it's very traditional in algebra to have the variable part first and the other terms second. And I'm going to switch these around only because it's a little more obvious that then I do have an addition of simply a number here. And remember, I can do that because I'm dealing with addition. Addition is commutative. I can switch the order and it doesn't change the quantity. So here you can see I have an addition. So to undo the addition, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do subtraction. So over here, I'm going to do subtraction as well. This is going to sum to 0, and I'm going to be left with 5f. My equal sign is going to come right down, right in line with where it's been. Now remember, this is actually plus a negative. So negative 55 plus a negative 1 is negative 56. Now, I don't have, at this point, I don't have any addition or subtraction on either side of the problem. I do have my variable part on the left, but I have a coefficient with it. And this is actually, remember, a multiplication. 5 times f. So to undo multiplication, I do division. So here I'm left with just an f, or 1f is equal to negative 56 divided by 5. And again, this is where we can use our calculators. And this one, because I don't have to round it, I can simply represent it as it is because I only have one decimal place. So f is equal to a negative 11 2/10. Make sure you get your signs in. That's another common thing as we go through algebra. There's so many steps for things. Kids forget their signs. Number 5. 1/9 equals k. Again, that would be 1k. Plus 2/3. 1/9 is equal to k plus 2/3. So here I look at my denominators. I have two fractions, and I want to find the least common denominator to use with these. So again, I start with my largest one. And I ask myself, is 3 a factor of 9? Well, yes, it is. So what I'm going to be multiplying every single term by in the whole equation is 9. This is going to work out nicely. Because I'm not going to have large numbers in the end that I have to work with. So 9 divided by 9 is 1, 9 divided by 9 is 1. 9 times k is 9k. 3 divided by 3 is 1, 9 divided by 3 is 3. So now I'm simply going to multiply across the top and the bottom. So I have 1 times 1 is 1. And 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 divided by 1 is 1. So I'm just going to write this quantity as 1 is equal to, and again, my equal sign is approximately in the same position, 9k, 9 times k is 9k, plus 3 times 2 is 6, over 1 times 1 is 1, which is the same as 1. So now my equation is 1 is equal to 9k plus 6. Here I do have an addition, and so I'm going to undo that addition by subtracting. I'm going to subtract 6 on this side and on the other side as well. So this is going to sum to 0. This is going to be plus a negative 6. So I'm going to end up with a negative 5 over here. A negative 6 and a positive 1 is a negative 5. That's equal to 9k. So right here, I have no addition or subtraction on either side. So now I have to ask myself, do I have multiplication or division? Yes, I have multiplication right there. So I am going to divide both sides by 9. 9 divided by 9 is 1. So I have 1k here is equal to negative 5/9. So it looks like on our instructions, they want us to represent these as decimals. So that is a negative 0, and I'm going to say 55/100ths repeating, because they asked us to round to this place. And this simply means, this bar over this 5 means I have 5 5s going on forever. Actually, that's incorrect. If I have a 5 here, I should round this to a 6. So this is going to be represented as 0 and 56/100ths without the bar, because I rounded it. And so again, I should use this wiggly sign, the wiggly equals sign, because I rounded this. So here's my answer for 5.